Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. This first map is a pretty good one to start off with because we're looking here at the total precipitation ranks by climate district. I show you these particular images a lot, but this is the month-to-date data we've got for the month of August. So you can see we're on the drier side of normal in parts of North Carolina, getting here into where we have kind of the border between North and South Carolina. But I want to put this in a broader context. Some of these drier areas you see here compared to how extremely wet it's been down here in the lower Mississippi River Basin, including the flooding in parts of Texas, our very active southwest monsoon. But you can see right here in the midsection of the United States, from Oklahoma through Kansas and back up into parts of Nebraska, where things are so very dry. And as I'm sure a lot of you corn and soybean farmers across North Carolina saw, the Pro Farmer Tour numbers were relatively low, and a lot of that was due to some really tough yields in parts of Nebraska and the western Corn Belt. But what we want to ask ourselves is, how much is this going to be changing as we go forward into the next month? And are we going to see some better chances for precipitation here as we work our way toward the end of summer? So just to add to this, I want to put up a map looking at the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. And as we just have a look here, just a reminder of the tremendous amount of flooding we saw last week here that stretched from the Red River Valley of the South into Louisiana and Mississippi. This is what's helped get them to that #1 ranking on the month of August. And just to let you know, it is not done here. We did have a system just off our coast, and it did bring in some rains. But if you look over the weekend, this is our weekend rainfall totals kind of zoomed in here. And we do see we just had some scattered storms. That was it. So a lot of places were relatively dry over the weekend. Now, right now, if we just kind of look around the country, I want to show you a couple things here. We still have this lingering boundary that's sitting just off our coast, and it's being fed by a subtropical ridge that's spinning here, pushing that moisture toward us. But how far inland does it make it before this front that's moving through parts of the Midwest today kind of sweeps through? That's going to be some of the big questions we've got. But before I dig into that, I need to talk to you about what's going on in the tropics. So for the first time in a while, we're seeing us a kind of rock back and forth today on the flow here across the tropics, looking at the convective systems. So this is cloud top temperatures. The colder, which is actually shown here by warm colors, that's kind of odd, but that's how we do it. The colder cloud tops represent deeper convection, bigger storms. And we got a new fresh wave that just came off of Africa, one that's right here that we're going to have to watch. I know it doesn't look like much, but that's the one that I think has the best potential for developing. And the reason for that is the wind shear has come down a little bit, and the dry air that's been to the north that so many of these systems have had to kind of deal with is backing off a bit as well. And that's just kind of the very basics of why the change is happening, but let's get to the results. What we see here is that over the next 5 days from the National Hurricane Center, 80% chance of that developing. Now, what's going to be important to watch is the timing of whatever develops here and the wave train of high and low pressure systems that are moving across, the United States. What would be ideal for North and South Carolina is to have a front kind of sweeping through to push this system back out to open ocean. What we worry about is if high pressure settles in, and that kind of helps guide the system in, because the winds go clockwise around a high, counterclockwise around a low. Now, with that being said, here's the latest model data. So this is the system we're going to keep an eye on. It's not yet named. It's still a potential system. But do notice that the latest track data suggests that it makes the turn. What has changed here is that we've gotten rid of these deeper troughs, increasing the wind shear. That's gone. So now the wind shear is lower. And we already know how warm the ocean temperatures are here. So what we're going to ask ourselves is this turn highly likely? And then don't forget, we need to watch for anything coming out of the Gulf or Caribbean, as it often gets just turned when it comes on shore over toward us. So let's watch all of this as we kind of go forward here. First thing I want to point out to you is kind of what we think is going to happen. And I'm going to use the operational European model run to show you that. Now, this particular map is looking at something called vorticity. That's just spin in the atmosphere. So just keep your eye over here for a moment. I'm going to play this pretty quickly through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we're going real fast here, because what I want to get to is where we see the circulation around that potential tropical system by this upcoming Sunday. Still well off of our shore, but it's going to be this timed with these troughs that's going to be critical. Now watch. As I go through Sunday and toward Monday, do you see how this cutoff is getting pulled into the broader trough here? But the broader trough is the more dominant factor that's going to basically take the upper level wind and send it like this. There'll be a front that comes through here. And the effect of that is that we're going to take whatever develops, if it develops, and shove it off to open open ocean. So watch. So that makes the turn. That's all due to the position of that trough. Now, if the models have this wrong, and that's always a possibility, and instead there's some sort of ridging here, that could be the thing that helps guide this underneath and pushes it. We don't have evidence for that just yet, but I'm telling you what could go wrong. But we'll watch that very carefully. As such, this is the next 15 days of precipitation anomalies. We're going to have a good discussion about this in the middle and end of this video. But do notice that parts of the south, getting in, especially into Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, extremely dry. And even though there are storms that are coming through the Midwest, including some great rains yesterday in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, parts of the Dakotas, even through Nebraska and Kansas, we're going to go back over to a drier pattern here very soon with a lot of high pressure. What you do note here is the dryness that we have in place right along the eastern side of both North Carolina and Virginia. And I'm going to tell you why that's there in just a few moments, okay? First, I want to show you just the week 1 versus the week 2 precipitation patterns. And the general idea here is this. During week 1, the position of the subtropical ridge is going to give us too much flow out of the west. So if it's got to come over the mountains, that's just the wrong direction to deliver the moisture. Into week 2, though, we're going to see that break down. So we could start to see better chances of more normal rainfall. But just to keep an eye out here, the next 15 days, so much of the south and southern plains is going to get very, very wet, continuing their flooding problems. So let me show what I mean here. As we play through Tuesday into Wednesday, let's get out here toward the end of the week. That trough that sweeps through Tuesday through Friday heads pretty far to the north. And the fronts that it tries to drag through here will bring some scattered storms. I'll show you those in a second, early this week. But behind it, we just run out of the right kind of lift. Now here's the problem. This is the overall position of the subtropical ridge. And there's another big one out west. Now if the flow comes around this in this direction, okay, can you see how you're pulling flow off the mountains rather than off of the ocean? So as a result, the moisture comes in here, but doesn't get over to the eastern side of North Carolina, Virginia. We got to get rid of that ridge. And we see some evidence of that occurring by maybe next Wednesday. See it out there now? Next Thursday. Now all of a sudden the pattern's doing a bit more troughing in through here, which is why we see better chances for rainfall at that point. So I'm going to come back and show you the operational runs in a few seconds, but I wanted to give you that quick description. Bigger picture things. This is the latest sea surface temperature update. First thing I want to point out, the ocean temperatures where we're seeing these tropical systems develop, there's plenty of warm water there for them to develop. It's all about wind shear at this point and dry air. La Nina continues to be very strong. In fact, if we look over the next 15 days, you've seen me do this dozens of times. These trade winds in the blue-greens over the next 15 days, strong. The westerly wind bursts out of the Indian Ocean remain strong. There's just nothing slowing this overall pattern down, breaking away from La Nina. Now, because of that, our outlook for September 10 to October 10 is very La Nina-ish. And that tends to be a larger area of the country and through here drier. Okay, that would be what would be normal with this La Nina. But we can never trust these forecasts of September and October this time of year, these long-term, because the European model, even though it is the best in terms of accuracy and skill, what it can't do, what it's not capable of doing, no model is at that point, is seeing over the next 30 to 40 days where there'll be tropical development. So it just takes one system to come through. It doesn't matter which direction it comes from. It can come through here and dump a bunch of rain. So we're going to put big question marks on this, as we always do this time of year, just because of the wild card that the tropical systems typically are. But going out there, September, October, November, as we talked about earlier in the month, the models are drier overall. That's the NMME, the group of models we run in the United States. You see that the European model, which will update on the 5th of September, it is also showing drier in this area. And all of this is a very La Nina-like fall pattern. So if you look at the history of La Nina and its correlation with weather patterns, doing something like this is very typical. So how long does that La Nina last? I do have some new data that I want to share with you here. In early August, okay, the forecast models here out of Columbia University were showing that the likelihood of La Nina dropping off, starting to drop off once we get started the new year. And going back toward neutral, maybe even a weak El Nino signal in there seems to be possible. In the latest update, which is the one that you see over here, I'm going to zoom in on it real quick for you. We now see even a stronger signal that by the time we get to the beginning of the new year, we could be losing the impact of this La Nina. and that's when the neutral conditions likely take over. And now that we're including April, May, and June, there's a better chance, if you're going to just ask El Nino or La Nina, there's a better chance for next spring for there being El Nino conditions. We're going to continue to have that discussion going forward here. But that kind of gives us some broader picture things to be looking at in the longer term. What I want to come back to is the near term. And I'm going to start you off with some high-res modeling. So we are watching for complexes of storms coming through here today. And there is, did you notice it? This weak low just sitting and spinning off of our coast. So maybe some scattered coastal showers because of that, and certainly some cloud cover. But we go through Monday night into Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, that low takes off. And then by Tuesday evening, we're going to watch for these storms associated with this low coming through parts of Ontario and Quebec to sweep through and possibly initiate some scattered storms across North Carolina going into the overnight hours on Tuesday into Wednesday morning. Now, after that goes through, that's our big chance of rain early this week. High pressure comes in and kind of cleans things out. Ready? We'll see that by switching over to the European model. So there's the front on Tuesday night, sweeps through in the overnight hours, and watch, I can just keep playing on out. There's through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Other than a stray shower or storm that could happen, overall we're looking drier toward the end of the week, and we'll see what those temperatures are doing in a few moments. Now, remember when we were talking about that potential tropical system? As this whole pattern evolves, that tropical system, see how it makes the turn? That's all because of the timing of another front coming next Monday, Tuesday through our neck of the woods. What's concerning me is that on Tuesday, there's expected to be a high pressure system here with the front out ahead of it. If the timing is wrong, and this high pressure system is more progressive and sits over here, then we're going to be talking about if that system could make its way into North Carolina. That's it. That's the main story out of any would-be tropical system here. And I don't want to jump the gun on this. Please understand, we're still at only an 80% chance that it could even become a tropical depression. So that's where we currently stand. But if we take all that rain and add it up, you got that chance of storms on Tuesday. See, I'm trying to come across. But I've given you this whole U.S. perspective because all the way out to next Saturday and Sunday, most of this section of North Carolina and Virginia is going to be on the drier side of things. So if you don't get the storms on Tuesday night, the chances of getting much rain after that are just limited. Okay? But take note, you can see this right over here? That's what the current operational run is doing with that tropical system. From there, just a reminder, this week through Thursday, getting out to Friday, subtropical ridge is here. So you see the flow comes around like that? That's why we just tend to stay on the drier side of things. The flow is here. It's not delivering the moisture from there. But as we get into week 2, we lose that ridge. See how it's gone there? Now the flow in the upper levels is just screaming like this. And that's why our week 2 precipitation pattern isn't nearly as dry as we're seeing for week 1. All right. From there, temperatures. Today's high is pretty close to average, honestly, maybe a couple of degrees above normal. This is Monday. Getting into Tuesday, we could crack 90 in Raleigh and surrounding areas. Wednesday, mid to upper 80s. By Thursday, same story. And while this is all happening here, extreme heat building through the west. Very hot conditions out there for this time of year. As we go toward Friday, another day where we're within a few degrees of average. Saturday, the same story, and Sunday. So you don't really see major deviations this week from what we call normal late summer temperatures. Beyond that, though, this is what the 5-day sliding window of temperatures looks like. Going out here to the beginning of September, look at the heat coming into the west. Excessive heat watches and warnings already out. But as we play out here into the second week of September, we don't see significant deviations from normal on our temperatures. Maybe a little warm bias, but nothing much. So that kind of keeps us pretty well regulated on temperature. Internationally, though, important news here. The big ridge that sat over parts of Russia and Eastern Europe has broken down. The heat's now moved in this direction. So what we've got here is some cooler conditions coming in while another heat wave starts to build in France and Germany. You can also see this. There was massive flooding here lately in Pakistan. Maybe you saw that on some of the national news here, and the cooler conditions there are because of that. But what I want to do from here is I'm going to give you the next 10 days on rainfall. You see drier from from Germany through Poland over toward Belarus and then here into parts of the Russian wheat belt. Same thing for Ukraine. We're thankfully going to be drier in Pakistan after incredibly heavy rainfall. But the drought that's been ongoing in China, specifically southern China and the Yangtze River, continues, but we're even drier farther to the north as well. Much of Australia is wetter, very wet signal here, but I want to talk about South America as we wrap up today's video. And what I want to do is I want to show you the next 45 days. Now this gets us through, of course, the start of their planting. And if the rains do return and stay farther to the north, then we will have a very fast plant north. But southern Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina. So southern Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina could struggle with early season moisture, and that could really slow things down there. We're going to have to watch that very carefully for the planting of first crop soybeans. So I'll keep you posted on anything that changes internationally, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.